So welcome to Conference Ready Poster Design Skills. I'm Charlotte Vandervoort. I am one of the librarians here at Lewis Library, and I am the TCOM and CBTS liaison librarian. So generally speaking, if you put in a request for me for research help, you're going to come to me. We have a lot to kind of get through today. Some of it I may skip over. If you have questions, you can ask them at the end of class. There should be time for that. And if you're just joining us, come on in and grab a seat and grab some food. So by the end of this class, you should be able to select the right font to make your poster readable and professional. You should be able to create a lot of balance by organizing your text, images, and your white space. Hopefully you'll use color effectively to enhance clarity, accessibility, and visual appeal. Design clear and engaging layout. Layout can be really important so that it kind of pulls users into your poster so that they'll view your research and understand the importance of ORCID. So what is a research poster? A research poster is a professional display of your research, often during professional conferences or academic presentations. So for example, what's coming up is RAD. We do have this example, kind of a bogus example, if you will, of a poster. And I just kind of want to show you that sometimes the choices that people make in their posters can be very off-putting. And this is a wild example. It has almost everything wrong with it. But even one or two things on your poster will kind of push people away or not want them to stop and talk to you. And I've definitely been there waiting for somebody, standing beside my poster, waiting for them to talk to me about my poster and my research. So there are some great nuggets of information in this presentation that will help you kind of avoid some of this. Obviously, you want a white space background. You want images that pertain to your research. It can be funny to put in a cute little clip art or something like that, but most of the time you want to stay professional. And you want to certainly pay attention to balance and make sure that everything kind of looks clean and polished. So we do recommend that you start your poster from scratch with PowerPoint. You can do that by setting up a page, then changing it to landscape or portrait orientation, and then changing the width and height of your document. You can also, specifically for RAD, it will have different dimensions than the typical research poster. I did get this directly from people who are working with RAD. So it will be portrait orientation. And so the width will be 36 inches, the height will be 48 inches. And then you make a blank layout that you can kind of start piecing together your poster. I actually also use Canva for my poster. So if you have a Canva account, you can do that as well. I just wanted to be sure to highlight the size of the RAD posters if that is what you're here for, because that will be important. And some of the examples that we have are going to be landscape orientation. Just know that you just change the sections to 3 sections below each other rather than beside each other. For your poster elements, you're going to want a title. You're going to have subtitles. You're going to have body text, hopefully not a lot of body text, okay? We'll talk about that in a minute. Images and graphics and any tables that pertain to your research as well. So the 4 things we're going to talk about specifically about poster design are typography, balance, color, and layout. Typography is just a fancy way of saying font, and we recommend no more than 2 font types for your poster. Any more than that and it gets busy. We also recommend that if you're going to be doing a printed work where people are going to be reading it in person, that you might want to use serif fonts. Serif fonts have the little feet at the end and they work really well to help people read your poster. For digital posters or digital displays, they can have sans serif, no feet. So obviously use your preference, but these tend to work best. As far as what type of font, we're not getting super fancy with our poster font, okay? We recommend these classics, Arial, Times New Roman, and Helvetica. Does that mean that you have to? No, but you don't want to make your poster hard to read any more than it can be sometimes, okay? So make it a font that people can easily read. And there is probably a list online that you can look up to find that if you would like. So we give some guidelines for the title font size, how to type it, should it be in all caps, also the subtitle, all caps, and then the body text, which I think can be really important because I've seen a lot of posters at conferences where the font of the body text is so tiny that you would need a microscope to read it because they want to fit everything in there. And that's just up to you and your job as the poster creator to summarize the information in a way that makes you have enough room to have 24 to 32 points for your font. And that includes captions at the bottom of the pictures or any kind of attribution you're giving, any kind of description of something below an image. So keep that in mind. 48 points or greater for both the title and subtitle, 24 to 32 points, including captions for the body text. Really quick, keep it simple, no more than 2 font. Probably going to use serif. That means text with foots at the bottom. And then when selecting a font, you want to keep it simple and basic, and we've given you some examples of that. All right, balance. This shows an unbalanced poster. And imagine walking up to somebody and trying to pull out exactly what they did and what they concluded from this poster. So what we have next is the same poster, but balanced with images, with tables, and with actual pictures and diagrams and stuff of what they did. And so you can see it just kind of makes it look a little more interesting to people who are going to be looking at your poster. And if you're interested in like placing well, like if there's a competition for posters, this is the kind of posters that win. So best image practices. Images should be imported as a JPEG or PNG format, preferably 300 DPI dots per inch for printing large scale, or 72 DPI for large dimensions. This step can prevent your images from being pixelated. And we see that a lot as well when we go to conferences where they aren't high resolution images that are placed in there, but they don't find out until their poster's already printed. Always give credit to a photographer or author or creator of your images. That's a really easy thing to do, and it just makes sure that you cover your bases when you're using somebody else's material. There are some generic image resources that you can use to find images. Unsplash and Stocksy are good examples of that. You may have to make an account to get access to these. Stocksy's isn't free, Unsplash is. Now, specifically for biomedical, we have OpenAI, which is a resource from the National Library of Medicine, where you can go in and look for images to be able to use. And you would, of course, have to appropriately attribute those images. And then BioRender is a tool to help scientists create and share beautiful professional science figures. So maybe you want to create a little diagram of the brain of the mouse that you're showing your research for your study on. You can do that with BioRender. The balance summary, your paper should just be more than words. Make it visually interesting. Give it tables, give it images and diagrams. Where possible, try to create images and put those images and items in to create that balance, and make sure that your poster is visually interesting. Avoid copyrighted materials on your poster, and always give credit to anything that you used that wasn't yours or you didn't design. Color section. So there's not a whole lot to say about colors. Beyond that, some institutions and some conferences may require a color palette. Sometimes people like to use the colors of the institution that they're from. These are our colors. So if you would like to use them, it's got all the codes you can need to be able to get to the correct color. I will say, as you saw in that example train wreck poster, right? Neon, garish colors, anything that's like very weird on your eyes, yellow, for example, those colors can be very off-putting on a poster. So stick to vibrant colors as an accent, and I wouldn't make your poster super colorful. Color should be used intentionally to help draw people in and draw people's eyes in. All right. So one thing you'll want to avoid is large areas of black or extremely dark colors across your poster. Dense areas of ink can make the paper weak, and it will crack and crease, and it can take a long time to dry. Consider matching your color palette with your imagery. And as I already said, some institutions will require you to use brand colors and logos. So for layouts, we get a lot of questions about this. If I have an ORCID ID, and I'll go into what an ORCID ID is in a minute, but if I have an ORCID ID, where should it go? It should go somewhere around your name. It's an identifier for your research. QR codes, that's for extra information. Maybe you have a website dedicated to your research that you're doing. Maybe you have a lot of references that didn't fit on your poster. Maybe you have a whole other set of pages or even like a toolkit or something. This is where you can put in, use a QR code. And we recommend having the QR code at the bottom because then people recognize that it's something that's going to be extra to your poster. So what is an ORCID or an ORCID? It is a free, unique identifier that reliably and clearly connects you with your research contributions and affiliations. And that can be really important if you have a very common name, like John Smith, for example, and also if you have a very hard to spell name or a very long name. So when people start looking for you and they make those misspellings and they have your ORCID ID, they can look at your research without having to worry about how they spell your name. And I have that a lot with my name. My name gets misspelled a lot. So that's why I like to include that as information. It's basically a LinkedIn for researchers. It allows you to kind of make a portfolio of your research. So the key benefits of ORCID IDs are global recognition. Some funders, when you make grants, will require it. Some conferences will require it. It's time saving because it automatically fills in forms or manuscripts and grant submissions. So it fills out all the information that it already has on you for that grant or manuscript submission. And then increased visibility and enhances the discoverability of your research by linking your work to your unique identifier. So to get your ORCID ID, you can go to orcid.org and register if you don't already have that. I would highly recommend it. It's a great way to just kind of collect your research as you do it. So the other part of layout is margin. And you can see from that example poster in the beginning of the presentation how there's really no rhyme or reason to where they put their sections or anything like that. So consistent margins and a uniform gutter, that's the outside margins of your poster, can really come in handy. And I will say you need to be careful when you're designing your poster about leaving room at those gutter margins. If your poster is too big and you don't really keep it within those margins, you could have part of your poster cut off and not printed correctly. So we want to avoid that. I wanted to let you guys know about the better poster option. This is a poster type that has kind of come about in the last 10 years. And I'm seeing it more and more at conferences. Basically, you kind of give the gist of your poster and the big middle part of your section of your research poster in plain English. And so it'll tell people your conclusion in plain English. They can read it and say, oh, I'm really interested in that, right? And pulls people in a lot easier. So they can just, rather than trying to glance by and read part of your research before they stop to talk to you, they can read what it's about immediately and then be like, this is what I'm interested in, or this is what I'm doing research in. So I definitely want to talk to this person. And you can kind of see the large part of a usual poster will be on this side. All of these titles, intros, the subheadings, etc. So preferably with a lot of more bullets than wide swaths of text. And then the tables and extra figures would be on the middle. We've even added some interesting stuff in the middle too, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So because I know that RAD is a portrait oriented poster this year. I also found a portrait option for the better poster. And so it kind of shows you how you might want to break it up. There is not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. Just know that you want that main idea very prominent on your poster, so that people can figure it out very easily if it's something that they want to talk to you about or ask questions about. And just a real world example, we have a book club. We presented on the book club and did a poster. And this is our better poster real world example that we did. And you can kind of see it follows the information, but we also added a little different graphic in the middle to kind of make it fun. Some common research poster pitfalls. I see this a lot. The font is too small to read. I've already said that. Your images are not high res or are pixelated, or they're not attributed. That's also important. I do see a lot of fabric posters, and I understand the gist behind it, which is you don't have to worry about carrying it on the plane and having to grapple with a poster. So it's way easier to fold up a fabric poster and put it in your bag. But what happens is nobody irons their poster, and there's a lot of creasing in that poster. And then when they try to stretch it onto the poster board, it can kind of get distorted. So if you do a fabric poster, which there are options online that businesses that will do that, just be sure you kind of make it look like everybody else's poster, because everybody else's poster that's paper is going to be rolled up and it's not going to be creased. It's not going to be able to be stretched, etc. So keep that in mind if you do posters on fabric. Definitely, I see a lot of wall of text where they have not summarized into bullets, where they have not added images or made diagrams. And that, like I said, that can be very off-putting to people who are just trying to get some quick information about your poster, or maybe they're trying to judge your poster. Not enough white space is always another one. White space is pleasant to the eye, and it makes it very easy to read. Fonts are two different types of fonts that we use on white space. So it's always good to kind of keep your background very light. If it's not white space, I would recommend like a beige or a light gray or something. I would not make any different wild colors of your background. And then finally, too much color and off-putting colors, as I mentioned before, can be, you think, it's fun when you're doing it, but when you're trying to get people to come up to your poster and look at it and talk to you, it's less fun because they're like, I can't read that yellow font that you have. All right, layout summary. Do not overcrowd your poster with information, and be conscientious of those margins, especially for printing, because they could be cut off. So I did go ahead and take the liberty of calling Minutemen Press. This is a preferred vendor through UNT Health, where you can print your posters. Minutemen Press, Fort Worth Stockyards on Cullen Street. They request 3 to 4 business days, right? So that means you have to you can't just say the Friday before your poster is due on Monday. You have to take into consideration business days. And then the cost is $73. That's generally going to be the lowest place that you can, or lowest cost place that you can get a poster, unless you happen to have a hookup somewhere or know somebody.
Is this a paper one?
Yes, it is not forever. So we do have some resources that we recommend. We have the RAD playlist. If you're interested, that is our YouTube playlist. We have a research poster guide that has a lot of this information that I've given you today. It won't have the RAD specific stuff necessarily, especially RAD specific to this year, which it has changed a lot. And then the scientific writing guide, which can help you with the writing portion of your research before you make it into a poster summarized version. So with that, I just want to say be intentional with your design choices, because it can really enhance your poster presenting experience at a conference. We do recommend that if you have any research poster questions, that you ask your mentor or ask the people who are coordinating the RAD conference this year. And for poster design questions, you can always send a question to Ask a Librarian, chat with us, come visit the library, or give us a phone call. And that concludes research poster skills. If I could ask you, if you have a device, please do a quick survey. It is very quick. And I will be taking questions now. Yes.
Does UNC have like a template? I know with like the design changed like it.
Right. So they used to have a template, and those old templates are on our research poster guide that is linked within these slides. So you can go to that one, download it, and then change it. Keep in mind, you would have to change, if it's for RAD specifically, you would have to change all those orientations too. So change it to portrait, and then you'd have to change the measurements as well. Are there any questions online? Okay, one more?
Yeah, sorry. For the ORCID IDs, should we, if we do like ours, do we want to put for every single author in there or just do one?
That's a good question. So she's asking if we do ORCID IDs on our poster, do we want an ORCID ID for everybody on the poster? It really depends. If it's just you presenting, but everybody else has like, an authorship, I might just put myself. But if everybody's there presenting on the poster, I might put everybody's. Yeah. Yes.
So for the better poster that you were talking about, that middle section or the top section that has like that main, like essentially what we're concluding, do you still write a conclusion? And then also, is that like a one liner, like one sentence kind of summary of what the research is?
Right. So the question is, what exactly is involved in the better poster section, where it kind of spells out the main idea of the better poster research? What I would suggest is do all of the same subheadings that you would in a normal poster. So you're going to have that conclusion section down at the bottom, right? Because you're going to have more than one conclusion or more than one thing about your conclusions that point you to that conclusion. But in your main idea, you're going to say, for example, this is an example of a poster I recently saw. Rats who have a fentanyl addiction decreased their addictive behaviors with fentanyl by using a GLP-1. And that would be your big sentence, right? Or maybe GLP-1s decrease the addiction qualities of the rat study that we did. Something like that would kind of just basically give the big gist of your research that you did and what was concluded. And then that pulls somebody in to be like, okay, what happened? How did you do this? I'm working on this research. Did you do this, do that? And so it kind of creates an opening conversation rather than somebody having to stop and read some very tiny fonts to figure out what your title is. And maybe they don't know necessarily enough about your parts or your research to understand what your title means.
So is it still considered like a traditional poster style? Like, I guess if we're getting judged on a poster presentation and what our poster looks like, is that something that a judge would be like, what is this? Like, would they know what they're looking at and what they're judging? Or
I think as long as you have all of those elements that a traditional poster would have, you have all the subheadings that talk about the discussion, the methods, conclusions, etc. That's what's recommended to have on that side. You're having all the elements that you would have in a normal research poster, but you're making space for people to kind of understand exactly what your research was about and what was concluded. You don't even have to give the whole thing away, right? You just have to say, in the rat study, this happened. But people want to know why, particularly if they're interested in your field of research, or even if it's just an interesting topic to them. I see this better poster option at nearly every conference I go to, but not everybody does it. So you can go with traditional, and traditional will be broken up in the same way that the landscape one would be, except that you have your 3 sections going top from bottom rather than side to side. It's just up to you how you want to do that. It is an option. It is something I'm seeing at most conferences. That doesn't mean I see it widespread. So use it if you would like or not. Any questions beyond that?
I know they extended the RAD deadline for abstracts. Does that abstract have to get like approved first and then we start like working on the poster, or it's like we go ahead and start working on the poster?
I'm not exactly sure. Hopefully you covered all your bases with your abstracts. So I would assume that if you put in an abstract, you should probably start working on a poster. So the question was, if they extended that abstract, do we know if we should start on our poster sooner rather than later? How would we know? And I'm sure you'll be notified you've made it to the next round. They should be giving you kind of some guidelines on your poster. I just happen to know a few things ahead of time because I was teaching this class. But that is a good question. All right, with that and no questions in chats, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and stop sharing my screen and see you guys later.